All right, hey everybody. My name is Brett Perdue. Welcome to another wine tasting this week, our virtual tasting from Becker Vineyards. We are excited to be here live broadcasting for you. I'm actually at the winery, showing you what's behind us live right here in our Xenia field. We've got some library wines we've selected this week that Dr. Becker and their family have gone through and selected for us to try. And we've got John Leahy with us, our winemaker, as well as Dr. Becker. So I'll turn it over to John and we'll get rolling on this fun tasting.
Cheers, Brett. I love the perspective, the sky and the zinnias in the background.
Well, cool, thanks.
And it shows off your nice, colorful shirt.
Yeah. Well, I got to compete with you on the colorful shirts, you know. So.
JariWest.com.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Doc, would you like to do our intro, sir?
Well, no, but I want to say that I love where Brett is, and we've talked many times about this broadcast being our version of what the New Yorkers do at 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock and get out on their fire escapes and banisters. To be out in a Xenia field, Brett, is a tremendous improvement on all of that, but it's the same idea. On the pandemic, I just want to say that it's as terrible as it is, as many months as we are into it, 6 or 7, we know what to do now. We know that if everyone wears a mask, this will go away. If everyone wears a mask, we're protected. So whenever you're in any kind of a group, whenever you're inside, that's the thing to do. That'll protect you, protect people around you. And we'll get to this vaccine, which I think is going to be hopefully by the end of the year. Nobody really knows, but there are a lot of bright avenues on that. So that's something to look forward to. And I want to say that it's really a treat to taste these old wines out of our cellar. It'll be fun to talk about. Thanks, John.
I've never had the 06 or the 08. And I think for everybody joining us, we're going to kind of just do these one at a time, and we can certainly go back and compare and contrast, but I don't really think these are set up for compare and contrast. I think these are 3 very wonderful individual wines. So, and I really can't answer much about the 06 or the 08. So Doc and Brett, you guys are going to have to take the lead on this, but I think we should all start with the 06 and give it a swirl and a sniff and a bit of a taste.
Well, John, let me say a little bit about the vineyard. Yeah. Steve Johnson planted this vineyard. It's just there's a fence line between, on Bell Mountain, between Bob Oberhammen's vineyard that goes back many, many decades. And Steve planted an adjacent vineyard and planted a lot of great varieties, but mainly wonderful Bordeaux varietals. And Steve was a Hungarian immigrant from the Hungarian Revolution in the 50s. Like many of those people, got very well educated, well trained as an engineer, had a great career in Houston, came to the Hill Country and planted this vineyard. And he was a friend, and we bought grapes from him for a number of years. I have much admiration and respect for him, and it's fun to taste his 06. Actually, he called me about 4 or 5 years ago and said he just opened a bottle of this and it was knocking his socks off. And so he said that with a Hungarian accent. Anyway, Steve, if you're anywhere listening, I hope you hear this.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's kind of fun when you're able to share everybody's hard work and then come back and visit it and everybody's pleased.
That's the truth.
That is wonderful. Brett, so when 06, when was the first time you dealt with this?
So 06 was the year that I came back, I think,
right.
if math is correct. But and right out of the gate, we started picking stuff in the Hill Country, and I remember going to the Granite Hill Vineyard to look at the cab and the Merlot that we had contracted there from them. And again, like Doc says, Steve, I remember that they had a lot of golf carts, or a lot of lawnmowers, that they would make that vineyard look like a golf course. And so every time he'd go check on something, I think he would jump on the lawnmower and go out there and mow his vineyard. And that's also the year that I think I convinced Dr. Becker to let us put grass in our vineyards here and quit clean tilling. And I think, if I remember right, the next year it rained a whole bunch, and that was probably the only reason we could get in and spray the vineyard. So there was kind of a little thing that we took from their vineyard to get that grass and get it as short as we could and just make it look as manicured as we could. And that changed kind of what we did here at our vineyard as well. So That's what I remember about the '06 was that it was my first experience dealing with Steve and that group that was there.
That's right. I think the grass was a lagoon that would trap nitrogen and store some of it in the roots. And we thought maybe we might ultimately plow that in. But, it was a good idea. Yeah.
But when you would go look at that vineyard, it was just immaculate. It probably still is. I haven't been out there in a long time, but it just looked like a state park, and every row was in a perfect spot. And Bill Blackman is the vineyard manager. I think he still manages it, and it looked incredible. So,
well, it's the results are really nice. Now this, yeah, wow. I mean, this is an incredible nose. I decanted this about an hour ago now. It needs a little more time, but that nose just keeps coming on there. So it says on the back of the bottle, Doc, unfiltered, unfined. Now, did Russell, I'm assuming, was the one that did the '06, yes?
This is all about winemaking, John. There's a lot to be learned here.
Okay, I'm paying attention. So was Russell the winemaker for the '06 vintage?
Yeah, I'm sure he was. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
sorry about that.
Yeah, it says unfiltered,
John, he
unfined.
was. And if I remember right, I think even back in those days, Doc would come in and say, "Don't filter the wine," and then when he'd leave, the winemaker would filter it, and I think that still happens a little bit. No,
I tried.
Oh.
yeah, but no,
All I know is what I read in books, guys. I mean, that's the best I can do.
But I do think that I remember on this one that they did. I think he sent it off, and again, John, like you do, it's more practical and scientific, and I don't think that there was a lot of manipulation as far as sending it through multiple passes through the filter. And I do think that they let this one sit, and this was back in the day when we used all A&K barrels, which if you guys don't know the story back outside of here, is those are the barrels that Silver Oak used for many years. They probably still do. I think that they liked them so much that they went and bought the cooperage. But that's one, I guess, variation that we have now is that we switched out the A&K cooperage and we're using more Demptos oak. But for sure, this was an A&K American oak, I believe.
Yeah, well, the A&K is also a Missouri oak. Along with the Demptos, so the Demptos American we also get from a single Missouri ranch. Not the same, but it has very similar characteristics as far as the type of oak.
Brad, John, I would say that what was so wonderful was every time we went by and tasted the barrels, tasted this wine, it had what it still has. It had this wonderful fruit note. It had a little bit of orange note and a little bit of kind of strawberry and then
somebody commented on Facebook, they get a lot of Christmas tree, a little pine edge on there.
Exactly right. Yeah. And I thought, gosh, if we could just get this in the bottle, we'd be way ahead of the game. And I think we did. And if it got filtered, it's okay. But
well, so wow, this cab is nice. There's no two ways around it. This is a nice Cabernet.
And I can't remember, John, when they, I know that our parameters on this were always over 24 or 24 and a half bricks. I'm sure with the alcohol that's where this vintage was. Being 13.5 is probably right at 24.5. That's right-ish, right? And I think that when they train these, that vineyard was really tall as far as the VSP system. It was very vertical, and they did that to kind of maximize the sunlight exposure on that particular site. But like Doc said, being on that Bell Mountain, I'm sure that it's on a lot of granite soil.
Yeah.
And Doc, you could probably elaborate more on that. I'm not real versed on the different types of soils that are out there, but I know that it was next to that big granite rock that was close to there.
Well, there's a lot of minerality in here. And I think, that I like that larger VSP too. I mean, I look at it as a solar collector for the grape, but it also provides a lot of sunburn protection if the canopy is large enough for the grapes and a lot of air.
And I remember that their Merlot was a lot shorter, and I think that's pretty indicative of, at least if they planted on the same rootstock, the Merlot canopy was a lot less vigorous and the cab got a lot taller in that particular block. But and again, if you can see the vines behind me, we're doing tall VSP here as far as on this wine club block, where we want to get it as vertical as we can. and let that sun get in there and let air go through it too, to get rid of all this, the different humidity and the things that we have as far as dealing with vineyard stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that circulation is so very important. I'm really enamored with this because of the almost mincemeat edge, mincemeat
Yeah.
pie edge I get on this, which is
Yes, it
something I
does.
find in a few Cabernets every once in a while. But to draw a close correlation, I would say Stag's Leap Cabernet out of Napa has that pine or mincemeat edge.
Yes, it does. Well said, John. Yeah.
Hmm.
Interesting. So I was tasting that as orange zest, but
Yep.
mincemeat is a better description.
And now it just dawned on me, Doc, why I have 2 pounds of Zante currants in my cabinet, and I couldn't remember why I bought them. I'm supposed to make mincemeat.
Yep.
There we go. Oh, wow. This is such a beautiful example of what good Texas Cabernet can do long term.
Uh-huh.
The unfortunate part I think about winemaking is it takes a decade and a half to realize whether it's going to survive or not, and
Mhm.
this is certainly there.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about our library program and the things that we're saving, this was one that I think we might have put maybe 10 cases away, if I remember right. It wasn't a lot, and we probably should
That's
have
all I
put
can afford, Brett.
2 or 3 pallets. And I remember when Steve came in that time, and I think we had a vintner dinner, and we pulled some of this out, and I think it was probably 5 or 6, 7 years ago now. I just remember how good it was back then, and again, for us, when we pull these out, all we wish is we had more of these. If in the state that this one is tasting, at least to me, I wish I had 150 cases still down there.
Yeah, boy.
Somebody just said they got an 07 instead of an 06. Did you guys do an 07 Granite Hills?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Was it an 07 or 06 Granite Hill or a Canada?
I don't know. It just says we received an 07 instead of an 06. It's delicious,
Okay.
not what you're discussing. So
Yeah. If they got the 07 Canada, that was a bonus.
no doubt.
That there's only about 35 or 40 bottles of that left down there, and it was not meant to be sent out. So they are side by side in my recollection of what's downstairs is they are by each other. Somebody grabbed one or
Right.
one rolled off and it went into the wrong bin.
Oh, Doc, any final comments before we move on to the 8? We will be coming back. I just want to get through all 3 of these and then come back and do a little more.
I just the more. I mean, this is absolutely lovely, and it's as it's oxidizing in the glass.
Yeah.
Well, the fruit is really beautiful in this. Boy, that's great.
I don't know. Before you know it, you're going to have a legacy winery there, Dr. Becker.
I'll take it if we can make it happen. Yeah.
So Brett, do you have the 08 poured?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This was a fun project. If you guys that have the label or if you get a chance to check it out, we got Doc, you could tell the story about how you got in touch with the symphony.
Yeah.
But I do have the wine, so I'll let Doc talk about the symphony collaboration, and then we'll go from there, I think.
Well, they got a wonderful new conductor, Mr. Lindlasing from Germany, and the symphony was struggling, and I made this wine as a fundraiser for them, and they had some food and wine events and tastings, and they sold some of it, and we made it. I like the label, with the picture of him on the front, and he really liked the wine, and I said, well, we're trying to make French wine in the German hill country, and here it is. And he was interested in the German influx into Texas and the German population in our part of the world. But a terrific guy. I think he's just departed to another job. But that was the story of that.
Well, I tell you, the nose on this is a little darker than the 06.
Yeah.
And this, having cheated and looked at what the blend is, I'm not surprised that it is darker. I want everybody to kind of just give it a swirl and a sniff and a bit of a taste here.
Boy, it's very rich on the nose.
So I can remember this one too, John. As far as in 08, we got very ripe fruit. and also that'd be indicated by, you know, if you cheat and look on the alcohol on this one,
Right.
it's 14.5. And the other one that we had was 13.5. So that indicates ripeness, right? But I do remember that this particular vintage in 8, they got very, very ripe from these 2 vineyards. One was the Talent vineyard, and then the other one was the Newsom vineyard. And it's Neil Newsom, not Steve Newsom, for people that buy some of our other stuff. We talked about this in previous broadcasts that there's 2 Newsoms up there. They both say they're not related, I think, for a lot of reasons, but we'll leave that to them, right? But the Talent version of this had to be very young. And the Talent vineyards, you know, planting it definitely, you know, was no more than what, maybe 6 or 7, 8 years old. Is that right, Doc? I can't remember what year he started, but in 2008, it would have been early in those cab vines, and they were getting.
I think did he start planting in like 02? So
I think so.
might have been third leaf, maybe around there.
Yeah, I think it was either the second or the third harvest. I can remember right, because I remember when we made this for the symphony. This was a version of Cabernet blend that we were making for our regular reserve program, and I remember when you guys came in and said, "Hey, we want to do this for the symphony. Let's put something together." And we did this blind tasting and went through and picked this out. It was just kind of a neat process, like we always do. But I remember how rich they were when they were young, as we were taking them through the process, and it still, to me, got that same richness.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. This too was wonderful at barrels, Brett. I remember tasting through the barrels.
Yeah, that was a fun day to go through the barrel room. Back then, the barrel room wasn't as big, but it was fun to walk, you know, through the barrels of, you know, at that time, I think we probably had maybe 1,000 barrels. You know, now we've got 4,000 or 4,500, but it was a shorter walk. But I do remember both of these particular ones were just stars whenever we were going through and tasting them, from the time they got here to the time that we actually bottled it. And I think, Doc, that's one thing you guys probably ought to touch on. As far as these wines, people constantly ask us about how do they age, or how do you come up with how you're doing what you're doing. And I think you have an interesting, you know, thought about how wines, when they come in the winery that are good, stay good, and then they kind of go through their process of maturation.
I guess what I have to say is, you know, just we had a wonderful tour of Mouton Rothschild and with the winemaker, and there they keep the wine 2 years in barrel and then 2 years in the bottle before they release it. So it's 4 years from harvest. And I just remembering that I tasted first year barrel, second year barrel, first year bottle, second year bottle. They were all spectacular. You know, so we talk a lot about, well, maybe this wine will get better, you know, if it's not very good. And I think for me, probably that's generally not very true. If it's not good, it's not going to get a lot better. But the great wines are just wonderful from the get-go. And we've had a bunch of those with John. It's been a treat.
I really,
John, what do you say about that? Yeah.
Well, with the 08, I actually, so we were talking about this, like in what order to taste them right before we went live, and you know, came up with the order. You know, this 08 is starting to open up. I will say the 6 opened up quicker on decanting than the 8 did. And the 8 is now starting to develop you know, that little medicinal edge is starting to leave, and I'm starting to get more dark note come out of there, like a darker herbal note. And I'm having trouble deciding what kind of herbal note it is, but it's just really intriguing.
I agree.
And it has a little bit of cellar funk to it, so it needs some time to decant. But there's nothing, that fruit is still intact at the 08. When you taste it, it still hits me, you know, on 2 through 6 without a problem.
I'm getting a lot of essence of Xenia for some reason.
Yeah. Funny that.
Brett's coming down with powdery mildew.
And Angela, yes, we did discuss the fact that there are 2 ducks behind Doc.
It's a 2-duck day. You know,
I told him I wasn't throwing quackers.
You've heard about a 3-dog night, John. This is a 2-duck.
This is the 2-duck evening. It's a double duck night, as somebody just said. Yeah, this 08 is really nice. So what was okay, briefly touched on it, but go a little more in depth, Doc, if you can, about the barreling on the 08 and why you guys decided a 50-50 blend.
I don't know why we decided 50-50. Brett, do you remember?
Well,
But
and I
maybe,
think, yeah, I think that we did a blind tasting and just came up with this blend like we did on other things. And I think that our regular vineyard
yeah,
or our regular Cabernet that we put out in distribution that year that was reserve cab, I think it was a 75-25. And then this one, we put in more of the younger talent. And I do think I think we only made maybe 100 cases of this when we started for the Symphony. It was very limited, and so we kind of did the big production blend first, and then we kind of came back and said, well, we got some of this, and didn't have to make very much. And I think that that's where the small amount of talent kind of came into play, because it was not, there wasn't very much of it then. And I think that when we did the blind tasting, this was definitely the choice, hands down, over something else.
Right. So was this all American, or was there any French oak in here at all?
French oak, John, we didn't know what that was.
Oh, Dr. Joe Becker, thank you for joining us. Was it
Hey,
was it a little hard getting off the green tonight?
come on, John. He had a stethoscope, I can tell you.
Doctors and golf jokes never get old.
Dr. Beaver.
Yeah, no, because the reason I asked about that, Doc, is because I'm getting some darker toasted notes, and I was wondering if it was because we darker toasted American, or was that actually French?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, John, that this was predominantly American oak. I think that at that time, or for the most part, for the reds, we were, and the funny part about this story, and I'll kind of go back on this, is that I remember when Dr. Becker wanted to use more French oak, and we were kind of, coming into this thing, and we would always go to these barrel experiments, and you think that French oak's always going to make it taste better in a way because it's more expensive and all this other kind of fun stuff. But I remember that we would go back and do these barrel trials, and a lot of times certain varieties we just really, really like tasting blind, the American oak on a lot of these Bordeaux varieties from the state of Texas. And I think that that's where that barrel program initially got kind of laid down, was that we were wanting to use more French, but every time we do a trial on these varieties, some of these reds, we definitely use more French on our white wines. We've done that forever. But every time we go back and put the reds in the American, it would actually taste better in a blind tasting than some of the French oak barrels. So I just remember that part of it. We were kind of stuck in that. And every time we'd try to vary from it, we'd come back and come right back to it.
Yeah. Well, there's no arguing with success, that's for sure. But I love the toasted nuance in the 08. That's just, I think it's because it's really starting to come out right now.
Yeah, this tastes like one of your wines. I mean, it really does. It has the body and the richness, and
I love the nose on this wine too.
So if Russell's watching, see, Russell, it tastes just like my wine. No. He's gonna drive down the street and pound on my door.
It's got an interesting note on the front palate, kind of a lighter fruit note. I think that's what I'm getting.
yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. It doesn't hit very hard on number one. It's not until
No, blackberry.
starts hitting there. Yeah. So for those of you, I will have to re-explain. I know we've got a few new viewers. So we're talking about 1 through 6. I'm talking about the front, middle, and back of the palate where wine hits. 1 and 2 are the front of the palate. 3 and 4 are the middle of the palate, and 5 and 6 are the back and finish of the palate. It's just a very short, easy way for us to be on the same page about what we're tasting and why. And it also opens up for discussion when somebody says, no, I get more 3 and 4. I don't get any 5 and 6 or very little 6. It's a good way of describing where you're at. So, Trish is finally joining us. Trish, we don't want to take you away from your heavy harvest, but thank you for joining us. And it would not be a great night if I couldn't give Trish a little bit of a hard time. So,
Rich, I just got here too, so don't feel bad.
yeah.
But
Hey,
Brett,
wait, were you and Trish out on the golf course together? So what do you think, Joe? Your thoughts on the 08?
Joe. Oh, thank you. Wow.
Yeah, this is another wine where I sound like a broken record, but I think it's still got a little bit of tannin structure left, and it's got a lot of richness and maybe some lighter fruit notes on the mid palate.
I love the richness in this. I mean, it's
Is anybody else getting a little bit of a medicinal edge on the nose? Just a very
Maybe
faint.
so.
Yeah.
I do, John.
yeah.
You know, it's funny because I remember getting that similar medicinal herbal edge on some of the Neil Newsom later vintages that I was dealing with. So I wonder if that's where it's coming from. But a shout out to both Drew and Neil for wonderful fruit, for years of wonderful fruit.
Absolutely, yes.
So Brett, what do you think? Oh wait,
I think it's pretty good. I wish I had more of this too.
Where's Rebecca?
Yeah.
I don't think we can blame it all on Rebecca. Yeah.
No, there's enough wine down there that I think she'd have a hard time drinking through it. I think all of us would have a hard time drinking through it if we really tried. But John, you touched a little bit about on harvest, and I think that I'll update this real quick while I'm thinking about it. But today we finished our harvest here at Becker. We brought in the last fruit from Farmhouse Vineyard and from the Talent Vineyard, which again ties back to this. But it's been a year that COVID needs to get out of here, and then we want to move on to the next year for a lot of different things. And I kind of feel the same way from the grape standpoint. But the grapes that we got were really good. We just didn't get a lot of them. But we finished today, and we're excited to be done at least with bringing fruit in. And now the guys have to, our team's got to process them through the goose and then press them out and put them to barrel, and then we'll get ready for the next part, which is usually our bottling season again in the fall. But today is the last day of actually getting grapes in the back door, so that's an exciting day every year, I think.
It is.
Always.
I will concur. It is a very exciting day. And you got to dump the last and the first bin, so we have held through with our process.
So we'll have a good year next year as far as at least all the good vibes we can give us. That's a few superstitions that I have, but it's it's worked for the last 15 years or so. So that's why we kind of insist on doing it, or at least I do.
Oh yeah,
I think everybody else thinks I'm crazy, but
nah. It's kind of like wearing the lucky shirt to your to the game, not letting new people in on the game that you're watching because they can hex your team. Well,
really we're having some wonderful pecans that this 08 is tasting very well with.
There's the ones you bought, Brett, and they're fabulous. With everything, all wine has one.
oh, I think Brett's a little frozen. Hey Brett, drink some more wine, you'll thaw out. Joe, somebody said Joe's late because he was watching his golf video, how to properly line up your fourth putt.
Oh, my.
Oh,
Proud.
yeah, right. Oh, goodness gracious. Hold on. That's kind of funny though. Let me move this to the side. Yeah. Oh, I just got a message saying that Brett's phone overheated, so that's why he went on frozen. We had him out in the full sun out there in the Xenia field, so he'll rejoin us here when he can. I don't want to move on too quickly, but any final thoughts? I want to get to the 13, then I want to come back, Joe. We're going to come back to the 6 and go through a little kind of compare and contrast and talk about what now that after it's open for a while. Any final words on the 08?
Lots of riches. This is just what we'd hope for in a wine that's 12 years old, and
Right.
it'd be fun to taste this another decade. I think it'd be wonderful.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very nice finish. Very, very smooth, rich finish on that one.
Oh yeah, somebody just said their cork crumbled on the 8, and I had the same thing happen to me too. You know what? Just push it through to the bottle, and I have a little Somm strainer that I use when that happens. All right, well let's get to the 13, to the modern decade of great winemaking.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you're joining us, we're just picking up the 13 Prairie Roti. So go ahead and give it a swirl, a sniff, and a taste.
Boy, lovely. Ooh.
I'm glad we tried them in the order we did, though, because that is a much lighter versus those darker notes.
But wonderful, wonderful bright fruit, John.
Mhm.
This is a star.
John, was this still being made by the amateur winemaker that we'd hired, or
Yeah,
had you joined us at that point?
yeah, absolutely. It's okay. We got her on the right track. Not here to defend herself. No, I fully expect Rachel to pop through a window any minute now.
John,
Yeah.
what's the blend on this? I don't remember.
So the blend, according to the winemaker's blend, regardless of how other people interpreted it, we had 22% Barbera in there, 28% Mourvèdre, 14% Petite Syrah, 30% Syrah, and 6% Viognier.
Was this Mrs. Cartwright's Barbera?
Yeah, it was off of the Peters Prairie. Yes. So for those of you who don't know, Peters Prairie was a vineyard we owned for a few years. They purchased it from the original owners, the Cartwrights. So it was and we just sold it, what, 2 years ago? You guys just sold it 2 years ago? Yeah.
Peters was a Confederate jailer in Brady, and he brought the black inmates down to this spot halfway between Mason and Brady to work in the fields and to produce, I guess, wheat and whatever else they were growing. And so it was called Peters Prairie. But Peters was actually the Confederate jailer, and most of his inmates were black, of course, in Brady. And he was the first person to farm this area where the vineyard was later planted.
Mhm. So the inmates were the first one to farm the area.
That's right.
It's kind of like I always loved the picture, the iconic picture of Sir Hilary when he was getting ready to get to the top of Everest, and the picture's taken from up high, looking down on him, making that final climb. Nobody ever gets Sherpa credit for being on top first. So, all right. So Brett, you're back.
Yeah, my phone got too hot. It shut itself off. I told you guys in the sun out there was bad.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you're in a different part of the world.
yeah. And actually, this is live too behind me. This is the yard of the winery. So I mean, it's not like the view changed that much. So you guys that haven't been out here to see this, it's pretty nice, and all 360 degrees of view, I think.
You know, it really looks like you're green screened into the side yard. It
Yeah.
really does.
Yeah.
Well,
That's not
real.
I
That's
know.
real.
That's real. Welcome to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Got enough rain out there. It's really green.
Yeah.
So the Viognier, let me go back to this. So this was the bit of Viognier that went in here is the Bingham Viognier from the 13 harvest. We did not have a whole lot of grapes in 13, much like 2020. 13 was also a very low yield year. And I remember
It snowed May 2nd in Gillespie County.
yes,
Snowed May 2nd in Gillespie County.
right? And nobody ever get my jokes about that at all during that time. I'm just saying.
No.
You know, this 13 is a very subtle, very interesting wine. It's
You
got-
think Russell made this?
Yeah, you know, this subtle, this sublime, probably.
Hey, wait a minute.
I'm sure I'm going to pay for this, Joe.
I got something in here somewhere.
Hey, John, I recommend don't pull that out, whatever
Yeah.
it was. Whatever was in there, just stop.
Yeah, just stop. No. Well, after tasting those previous two wines, I'll take that as a compliment, Dr. Becker.
John, I think it's wonderful. I think this inspired us to really pursue this Syrah Mourvedre Grenache combination. We've been on this track for 10 years, and it's
Right.
wonderful. I'm proud
Yeah,
of
well,
it.
it was, because we had gotten some 2012 Grenache. Unfortunately, we didn't get any in 2013, not for lack of trying and not for the heartbreak that all of our growers experienced in 13. But it wasn't until recently that the ducks all lined up, much like the two of them behind you, that we were able to get those components together. But so the Mourvedre comes from both the Peters Prairie, and then we also had the Mourvedre from Ready, the two sources of the Mourvedre in this. Then the Syrah is from Talent and from our front vineyard there at the estate, and then also from Peters Prairie. So we had three sources of Syrah on that. And of course, the Petite Syrah also comes from the estate.
Well, this could represent pretty much the entire production of red grapes picked in the state of Texas, at least for us in this blend, I believe. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
right.
the later budding varietals, every single one of those is a later budding one that would actually have a little bit of crop from 13. But, and it's got some of the old Martin vineyard in there too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the Viognier, I believe, isn't it?
No, it's Martin Mourvedre.
Martin Mourvedre. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Martin Mourvedre. I missed that. Yes.
Yeah. And then Martin Grenache, just a tiny, tiny bit.
Say, Brett, do you have any thoughts on the fun of growing Syrah, especially in Texas?
I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's probably one of the worst varietals that you could make me have to plant and take care of. No, I just think it just doesn't do well here for whatever reason. And so many of our growers have planted it, and that's not saying it's not going to work on a site. For the most part, people tell you not to plant Chardonnay in the state of Texas, and we have two of the best Chardonnay vineyards
Right.
in probably, in a long ways. But I do think that obviously when you talk about commercial viability for somebody to put grapes in and make their living with it, Syrah is just one that is tough. It doesn't mean it can't be done. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Syrah, and we have to leave those preconceived notions out of everything that we're doing, because again, every one of these layers is something that we use for different things. And we struggle a lot with the Peters Prairie Syrah. We struggle a lot with the Syrah that's here at our place.
Mhm.
And if you ask Drew Talent about Syrah, you're going to get a lot of words that we couldn't broadcast, I don't think. He's not a big fan of it, but we got some great Syrah last year from the Leahy Vineyard up on the High Plains, and hopefully that one will stick and be a good source for us too.
Yeah, that's part of what allowed us to do the GSM too, was the getting that, which is really, really nice.
John, I want to ask Brett. We spent a wonderful week in Provence with Brett and Chris and Bunny and I and Russell, and every day we would leave and in different directions, and Brett and Chris would go and discover and talk to lavender growers, and we were trying to develop lavender at a place, and then we would go and look and talk to the winemakers in Provence, Gicondas and many other places. And at night we would bring some wine back. Everybody would bring wines. We'd bring all the things you eat in Provence, so sausage and all kinds of things like that. Wonderful food. And Brett, does this remind you of some of the wine we brought back that week we were in Provence?
Yeah,
It
for
does.
sure.
Yeah.
And I always remember that trip because number one, it was the one. First of all, I kind of think I got gypped on the deal because I had to go look at lavender, and they were going to wineries. But
You were in very good company.
but we quickly figured out that you get home early and the wine would be there. So the lavender trip was fun in itself. I kind of tell people a lot about my wife that takes care of the lavender here, and got to go on that trip and look at lavender. But when we come home, there was these incredible wines from that region. And again, I think that when we talk about what wines we like to drink on a day-to-day basis, I always tell people like Prairie Roti is something that I love to drink before dinner, no matter what we're having. And you have it with cheese, or you have it with your starting course. You could just have it with so many different things, and I just think it just lends itself for that part. But then when Doc, you kind of go back and you're like, all the things that we had in Provence, I swear we had fish and things on the ocean when we were down near Tavel. And then we would come back up and have it with, like you said, the like pizzas or just meat and cheeses that were from that region. But it was an incredible trip. And I do think that ultimately the reason why we started making this was because you guys love those wines from that region. And again, we had a lot of debates about the name. I think the name is part of still the mystique about it. And you may want to go into that too, Doc, about why you named it Prairie Roti. And I will tell a funny story about the label. You know, we talk about labels a lot. I think Bunny pretty much put this picture of Dr. Becker on it to get back at him for him putting her picture on the Clementine label.
Yeah.
And
I thought it
that
was
was, I remembered. I don't know if it's true, but that was my story.
There's a lot to that. Yeah. Yeah. That's a barbershop photo. Anyway.
You know, I think we were, the Prairie Roti, we were thinking about that we love Rhone. We love the Rhone style wines. We were thinking that the Rhone style wines, have a very similar climate in Texas that they do in the Rhone. And the well-known Rhone being the Côte Rôtie, literally meaning the roasted slope of the Rhone, the sun roasted slope of the Rhone. And so we had the idea that we would do Prairie Roti, a roasted prairie. And we've always, this is a red wine that's always, to me, has been a very interesting, wonderful darker fruit notes, red wine, and I think it's something that we hope that would do well, and it has, but it's like Dad's haircut in that picture. It's we'd like for it to done just a little bit better.
Never turned the corner.
But the obviously the painting is Dad should tell the story, but obviously the painting is of Dad after a haircut.
No, during a haircut.
During a haircut.
No, so Tony Bell and I were, my friend, the artist, we were driving back from the first semester at the University of Texas at Thanksgiving, and I said, I have to stop and get a haircut. My father will, wants my hair to be shorter. And he went, grrr. And he said, well, all right, I'm going to sketch. I'll make a sketch. And so I'm sitting, sitting in the barber chair, getting a haircut. And so Tony whips this off and said, you want this? He only gave me 2 or 3 paintings or 4 paintings. They're all on white labels now. But it means a lot to me. But anyway, it's a funny story. But what I love about this wine, John, is as much as I love the most of the wines from the Rhone, this wine has a lot more richness. It's really, this is a terrific Rhone wine. A blind tasting in Avignon, this would people would line up for this. I think. I love the richness.
Well, then maybe I could join Stephen Taninger in getting kicked out of the country.
Possible.
John, is it the terpenes in this that are so dark and so rich?
Our Southern Baptist, John, is one of the other.
Oh my God. No. When the phenolic edge of that, Joe, is the richness is coming. Yeah, the terpenes when they cleave open are where the florals are coming out of. So, and then the hexenes are where you're getting that richness.
Okay.
So, but all in all, we use several varieties that are just known for phenolic richness. I mean, Syrah, hands down, and Mourvèdre. One of my favorite single varietals will always be Mourvèdre. And I really think Mourvèdre does very well in Texas. We've had Mourvèdre from several different vineyards, both in the high plains and the hill country. And overall, I mean, it's just such a great powerhouse wine.
And John, the first rosé you made, which was largely Mourvèdre, that won a double gold in San Francisco.
Oh, you mean the one that I direct pressed?
Yeah, thanks. Anyway,
I think Brett's audio just suddenly went out.
You're like,
great wine, John.
Yeah, we did. We took 5 tons of that Mourvèdre off of Drew Talent's property and did a direct press on it. It was an expensive rosé to make, but it was definitely a wonderful rosé to have. But yeah, that and the Syrah and the bit of Grenache, that was they were all direct pressed for that. But yeah, the Rhone varietals in the hill country to me are a natural fit.
And by the way, John, half my family is Southern Baptist. I just have to say that, but
and that's fine.
it's not a foreign experience to me.
It's been my experience that Southern Baptists still know how to fight. So,
I know it. I'm looking out the window right now.
yeah, right. Now, I really enjoy this wine. So our first attempt, or my first attempt at making a Rhone style for Becker Vineyards, and then and then being in the down year that we did not have a lot to deal with, but what we had was incredibly good. And I think that's what gave me hope about this year after going into it early in the season, knowing that we were going to have such a down year. But we've had some really good quality wines come through the winery so far, and it's kind of heartbreaking.
This wine is absolutely beautiful. I mean, here's to you.
Oh, thank you. I will take that. I think that it's going to be an unfair comparison, but I think just going back, maybe taking this out of the playbook and just going back to these 06 and the 08, compare and contrast, and ask, so between the 06 and the 08, which one would you choose and what meal would you choose to have it with? I want you guys to think about that for a second, but I want some final thoughts on the 13 before we go to that. I just wanted to give you that heads up. And somebody just said, Doc, that new crop of pecans will be in early November. So,
but we're eating rapidly.
Yeah. So, how many more years before we get into the food question? On the 13, what do you guys think? How many more years will this last? And then we're going to do that exercise on the other two as well. But on the 13, what do you think?
I think it's good for a while, personally. Not 100 years, but and it's pretty near perfection right now. But I think it's fun to let it get a little richer, a little darker. But I think this is spectacular wine, John.
Well, I will say that it tastes much better now than it did a couple of years ago when it went through its kind of ugly duckling stage, and as it out of that. It's definitely gotten better in the bottle, but I do think it's hit its peak. I don't think it's going to last another 5 years in the bottle. I think right now, going forward for the next couple of years, that will definitely. So Brett, have you been thinking about food on the 06 and the 08? Which one you'll take and what you'll pair, or no?
I'm going to take a stretch, and it's called tenderloin again. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, tenderloin would go with both of them for sure.
Yeah. Well, but I do think that to me, they're so cool. I mean, they taste so neat on their own, and you go back and forth between them. And I do think it's interesting as you come off that Rhone style blend that's lighter, and you go back to those, it completely changed the taste for me.
Well, a little bit more acid in that Rhone. Yeah, that 6 is just popping incredibly. I'm going to take the 8 again.
They're wonderful.
Oh my goodness. So,
John,
Joe,
it's embarrassing to have 3 really beautiful wines from 6, 8, and 13. I don't think anyone would turn his or her nose at these. I mean, they're just special.
I had an absolutely delicious beef short rib the other night that would have been wonderful, I think, with either of these, or even our chef Michael's beef bourguignon, maybe with the 08.
Oh, that would be nice. Nice. Doc, what do you think?
I think these wines are delicate and complex, the Bordeaux, and I like them both. They're different. I like them equally. I think subtle things, not it would be a delicate mushroom soup. It would be I'm sorry, I'd have to think about it some more. But and I'm not the foodie, as you know, but I think subtle food comparisons with these.
You know, Michael did a,
Did I
Understated
just hear
things.
you say you're not the foodie? Did I just hear that?
Well,
you know, our chef Michael did a cheese souffle that
Yeah.
I think would be a good pairing for these wines.
either one of them.
Yeah.
would be good. Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
That-
what I'm thinking.
that
That's what I'm thinking
was
about. Cheese souffle is a really delicate mushroom soup.
I'm quite frankly, I think with the 06, a piece of chocolate covered bacon would be awesome. Yeah, that
Where
souffle,
can we get
no, I
that?
think we just nailed it. Yeah.
Jody, we're coming for
All right. So, how long for the, to get back to the question that Angela asked, how much longer on the 06 and the 08 do you think?
I think another 5-10 years.
I do too. I think 5 or 10 years. Very properly settled. These wines have been in a good spot, and which Brett actually, his father built. I think that would be a good place.
Well, the bad news is I think there's like 5 bottles of each of them left or something down there. It's not much. We sold them.
Brett, we need another lock on the cellar.
We need a tunnel under the pavilion under here and put another, storage area.
Yeah.
Oh, can we make it one of those brick vaulted cellars that we see? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I think that the 06 and 08 will both last. I think the 08's got an edge over the 06.
I do too.
On lasting.
But I love them both. John, did you give us a food recommendation for these? What did you say? I didn't hear. Did I miss it?
My flippant answer was a piece of chocolate covered bacon, but I don't think I can top Joe's cheese souffle on that one. Though the beef short rib now has me very hungry, Joe. So thank you on that one. But the umami from mushroom would be very good. And I think I'm going to go with beef Wellington then. Yeah. You get that pastry, that umami edge. I really think that would
Also, John, I think a great cheese platter poured with Bordeaux cheese. Great French bread and butter with
butter.
These wines would just absolutely knock your socks off. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. You know what? We need to invite Paula Dean onto our program and talk about butter.
I'd like my sister Carolyn to weigh in on this. She's a great food and wine pair. And
hey, how about getting Carolyn to make those? Was it the cherry turnovers?
We'll see she might have another idea about these wines. I don't know if she's tasted them, but I'd like to hear what she thought. That would be fun.
That would be. I would go with a mushroom risotto if you were looking for something mushroom and delicate.
That's right.
Yeah, that starchiness would do very well on there. So
and we were in Poisse one weekend, and we had an Epoisse pizza, and that was special, and it would be very good with either of these wines.
That cheese souffle, that's got me thinking. Absolutely.
Well, if Michael's listening, we'd love to reinvestigate.
Yes, I think so. Absolutely. And I hope Michael's listening. So we should wait for a very busy Saturday and then tell him he has to cook cheese souffles. Yeah. So Brett, what do we have on tap for the next go round?
All right, so it should be a pretty fun week next week. We are going to keep these going on Wednesdays. I think we booked another month out according to what we picked last weekend. Next week is going to be the Becker family favorites. And I believe that went out today on our email string. We are open at the winery for appointment tastings. So we've been kind of doing about 30 different things. But next week is going to be the Becker family favorites. The following week is going to be our favorites, John and myself and Rachel, our assistant winemaker and enologist. And we are going to come up with some cool name for that week just to make it weird. And then we're going to get into our wine club shipments. So our shipment's getting ready to go out. in the next couple of weeks. I think the first week of October. And then we're actually going to do a virtual tasting for each one of those different wine clubs that we're going to ship to people, so that they can experience kind of what our thought was behind picking them, I guess. And we're going to do the red flight 1 week, the mixed club the next week, and then the white wine flight the following week. So that's our next 5 weeks of virtual tastings, as well as, like I said, the winery is open by reservation. So make sure to go online and click those reservations, because they're filling up like crazy. We're trying to keep everybody safe and distanced. And when I say limited, I mean very limited. There's not a lot of spots that are available. We have a lot of space out here. We're trying to spread people out, and hopefully we're going to continue to be able to do that. So that's what's on deck for us,
Nice. That's good. I wanted to do a quick shout out to the Whining Women, Tony and Lori. They just covered us on the Lugenbach wines that we do.
Oh, really?
For Lugenbach. Yeah, they do a podcast. I just listened to their episode. I think I listened to it about a week later, so they did it a little over a week ago. But they talked about the rosé, and so they gave us a nice little shout out. So thank you, ladies. Glad you enjoyed the wine. And
John, you didn't talk about food with the Prairie Roti.
with the Prairie Roti, yeah, because the only thing that you need with Prairie Roti is good company.
I think that's right.
Look at Joe squinting his face. Stop.
No argument. Yeah, I'm with you.
No, to be honest with you, we'd years ago had a nice tort. It was just thin cut onion, pear, and just a little bit of olive on there, and it was wonderful. It had a nice salty, sweet, and savory edge to it. I think that would be beautiful with this.
John, what would really pair well with this would be a poolside tiki bar.
Hey, that's a great idea. and it's almost done, Joe.
Ernest Hemingway loved peanut butter and onion sandwiches.
Ernest Hemingway had great taste. I'm just saying, you gotta love a guy that can go out and be an ambulance driver in Italy in World War I, go fight on the losing side of the Spanish Civil War, and then drink all day, write standing up all night, and had great taste in cigars.
Here's the great Hemingway story in Rick Atkinson's book. He wrote 3 books on the European theater of World War II, and the great story was that Hemingway, when the Americans came in and took Paris back, Hemingway came in with the resistance fighters, and he famously went into the Ritz Hotel bar in Paris and ordered 23 dry martinis.
Well, he was there at the landing in Normandy all the way through the retaking of Paris, and that all as a private individual.
Right.
You think he under-ordered on the martinis, John? Is that what you're saying?
I think he may have. 23 is a good number, but buddy, come on.
Yeah, John, we used to do that when we went to that one place in Fredericksburg that's no longer open.
Oh. I was just getting in touch with my Hemingway roots, though.
Yeah, right.
I have enjoyed this tasting, guys. It was a great lineup you chose. This was really nice. First time.
They are. These are. I'm proud of these guys. All 3 of them.
Yeah, that was a great lineup. We loving the 08. We're on our way. We've gotten some great feedback. I just want to encourage everybody to join us again next week for the Becker family favorites. Look at your email, get those ordered. We'll go through there, and Will be able to join us next week, next Wednesday.
You bet.
Okay, perfect.
Us?
Will.
Yeah.
Oh, Will. Yeah, Will signed up. Yeah, he's coming. Yeah.
All 3 of you. It's all 3 of you chose the wine.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then I think we will come up with a cool name for our tasting, Brett. But you know, I think Spot On is a pretty good name. No. So, all right, I have nothing else other than to wish everybody a wonderful evening. Thank you for taking time of your day and joining us. And
Thank you.
Cheers.
good
Wow,
health. And
way
good
to
wine.
go. Proud of it.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Bonsoir, mon ami.
We're still